Days after the Walter Scott settlement, Dot Scott sits down with me one-on-one to talk about the settlement and much, much more for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. Dot, it is so good to see you.
Same here. Glad to see you again.
Yes, indeed. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about your daughter, Darlene. She lost everything in the floods in Pepper Hill.
Everything. Everything. Baby's pictures. Things you can't replace. Water damage to a point of 4 feet in the house. Everything is gutted. All the furniture. All the electrical. The car is gone. In spite of it all, she's been pretty upbeat.
That's what I hear.
So we're going to get through it. We'll get through it. We have to think about those who lost loved ones in this, because material things, as we'll see, can be replaced. Yeah, but once you make the trip to the graveyard, that's it.
That's it, yeah. Until Jesus returns, and then you can get raised up.
All again.
Yeah. Let's stay in North Charleston. On Thursday night, the North Charleston City Council approved a $6.5 million settlement for the Walter Scott family. And I know the attorney for the city basically said this is a great lawsuit without, any violence and no lawsuits. And Anthony Scott, the brother for Walter Scott, basically said this is a bittersweet victory from what I understand. Tell me, when you think about $6.5 million, what goes to your mind, Doc?
If I was the mother of Walter Scott, trade in a minute. I'd give it back to have my child. But having said that, what else can you do?
Okay.
When you can't make me whole, then the next best thing then is to compensate in some way. So I think that, and I think much of what brought this to fruition is quickly and quietly in terms of the settlement, is the backdrop of all of what's been happening since Scott's killing. And I am pleased and happy for the family that there's at least some measure of closure in terms of restitution. Now, when I said some measure of closing, I still would need to see how the rest of the justice system works.
The criminal trial.
Yeah, with the criminal trial. But it would be bittersweet for me as a mother, as a brother, as an uncle, as a whatever relationship those family members have to Walter. It has to be bittersweet, but at least there's a little bit of sweetness in this.
And let's go back to last month. As you know, a circuit court judge in Charleston basically denied Michael Slager bond, basically because there was a lot of evidence mounting on this case. Where were you emotionally when that happened?
I was pleased with that. While we didn't, and I was hoping that it would go that way, because I really got the sense from conversation in the community that should that not have happened, some of this, what I call enjoyment of peace and perceived tranquility here in Charleston, that may have shown a different face had that not happened. While I think even the presentation to the judge and the public about why the officer should be allowed because he wants to spend time with his son, I think just the optics of that was enough to say he could have left that statement out, because the first thing that goes to your mind, well, at least at some point you may see your son. But and we're talking before Christ coming again.
Right.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen with the family. So I think all of what has transpired from his arrest, from his indictment, all of that has made for us to be able to look back and say there's been no violence. And the scary thing about that, though, it gives us a sense of all is well when all is not well. Does the fact that this has happened gives us a better window of opportunity to make things better? That's what I would hope from. I don't know from, where the Scott family is at this time in terms of all the other good that, whatever good, if there are, and I think there's some positive even after the death, because it was him, because Santana was able to have a video of it, which was pivotal. It was crucial. It was everything that guided where we are now in terms of the arrest, in terms of the denial of the bond, in terms of the settlement of the case, and to have it done so expeditiously had much to do about the video. So we can't dismiss that. We've been here too long. We've seen script. We've read it. We've repeated it, and it has done nothing short of, if you don't have the video, that's not disputed. And so I think when you look at that and you think that because of his death, in spite of his death, that now maybe things are going to be better for some other African American male, African American, other minorities, folks who the justice system really hasn't dealt well with, and particularly in my city of North Charleston. So I look at Scott's death and the family of Scott being, we're indebted to them in some way to say, because of your loss, we'll have some gains. So I feel that we're at a good place now. We're not at the best place, but at a good place relative to how we feel that the Scott family's been treated.
Let's move from North Charleston to downtown Charleston, where we presently are. As you know, a few weeks ago, the Honorable Mother Emanuel Way was released, actually unveiled, at Mother Emanuel Church, right along Calhoun Street. Many dignitaries were there. And I'm wondering, when you look back to that particular day, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, for family reason, I wasn't actually there. The first thing I thought, and maybe this is my looking at the half empty rather than the half full, the sign should have been bigger.
Okay.
I think the it should be big enough that there's no way you can miss it.
Right.
It's kind of like reminiscent of what I say about Spring Street when you have Dr. King, Martin Luther King,
right.
and there's nothing on the street and nothing in Charleston really says there's a level of respect. That's what I say, even give any kind of respect to who King is to minority folks. Now, surely the city of North Charleston has changed so much that I'm wondering who's going to take up the mantle and says, if we're really going to show the level of respect for contribution of African Americans in cities and towns and places where African Americans live, we need to do a better job about doing that, because we have lived with the statues that stand. I can't even imagine how high some of these statues stand that are not African American, and many of which are symbols of racial degradation for minorities. So I think that we can do a better job of making sure that if we're going to pay homage to our culture, that it be done in a bigger and better way, and it has to move outside of just the museum.
It's been almost 4 months since the tragedy at Mother Emanuel, and it's still fresh on many people's minds. And as we talk here right now, Dot, I'm wondering, where are your heart and mind right now, 4 months later?
4 months later, it's still one of those things that happen in your lifetime that it's hard to get your arms around it.
Yeah.
Every day, it's a little bit, I guess, I don't know, more defining in terms of where your feelings are, but for the most part, it's kind of reminds you, at least for me, about the World Trade Center when that happened, and how you were saying, how did this happen? I remember on the night of the killing at Mother Emanuel, and for something, this thing stuck in my mind. I was walking in circles at the hotel saying, oh, when the sun comes up tomorrow. It's like, this was a game changer. And it changed so many lives. And when I say so many lives, not only the immediate family or the community, but it changed the hearts and minds of a lot of people that were outside of the area, but who these people were forced to see racism in the worst way. I mean, it was so exposed, there was nothing you could do to make it look anything other than but for someone having a mindset that these folks do not need to live. I don't know him, it doesn't matter. It's because of who they are that I think that I have a right, I have a duty, have a duty to go out and do this because everybody else who probably look like me are the ones that I'm in contact with that looks like me. They don't understand that this needs to happen. So here's 4 months later, and we've got a shrine set up in that room there for the Mother Emanuel 9, and also my heart. I'm always saying Mother Emanuel 9+2 because coming up on the 30th when we have this banquet, we are going to be making recognition to not only the 9 as we did with the Charleston 9 when we had the fire, but also the 2 people that we knew that were most traumatized. And surely I think that the pastor's wife and the daughter not actually having to see what happened. I don't know whether they were even exposed to it, but even being there that close to losing their lives as well, it extends beyond the deceased. And hopefully the deceased is in a better place than any one of us are right now. But it is still one of these things that reminds us every time I see a shooting, and we have had so many since. In fact, I had just written a letter to the editor that I hopefully it'll be printed soon. But the day before the shooting in Oregon, and I wrote it because someone had written in the paper about how the Islamic family trained their children to kill them. And I said, that to me is here again where we're profiling and that racial stereotypes, because then if we go out and say that every white mother and father is training their children to kill black people, it wouldn't be right. In fact, it isn't right. So we realized that we got so far to go, because this was somebody that actually lives here in Mount Pleasant, and I'm saying, when I say an affront against one, it's against all, because it might be the Islamic faith, religion, and now it might be the Latinos, it may be the gay and lesbian. There's always that element of folks that's so judgmental, and this is my world, this is where it goes, and they have decided they're judge and jury. And when you teach your children that you're the one that's entitled, everybody else doesn't deserve the same break, they're not entitled to it, the country belongs to us, and it's what we want to do, and if they step out of line, we need to fix it.
Describe to me the following in one word. Former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton coming to Charleston.
It excites Dot Scott.
How so?
Well, because we are what we call publicly nonpartisan, and I said we are, the NAACP is. We do not select our speakers based on who we are aligned with if they're in an election cycle. We select our speaker for 2 reasons.
Okay.
First and foremost, the message has to be our message, their message, wherever their agenda is. That has to be NAACP.
Okay.
And secondly, can you put the seats in those seats for us? That's what we look forward to. We want someone to come because we only have, our job is civil rights work, not civil rights celebration. Our work will speak for itself. So we look for someone who can come in and speak to us, reinforcing the message that we keep trying to expound ourselves. But we also want that person to be someone who people would want to come and see, because at the end of the day, we want to have money to continue to work. Now, I feel very gracious that she is again accepted, because she was here with us in 2007, which was one of our most successful fundraiser, the banquet, since my tenure the past 15 years. Right. So that in itself, to me, when the acceptance came about, and had a little bit of inside help with that, since a few people who are in charge of trying to set up calendars, were able to work with us. But I am so excited about it. I am just absolutely just hope that we don't have another flood that weekend.
Yeah, well, let's pray to God that doesn't happen. Describe to me the following in one word. The $25,000 donation to the International African American Museum. Because I know you were speechless from what I read.
And still speechless.
Okay.
Still speechless about it. And Quintin, to me, while they said they did it in my name, my name would not even be known if I wasn't affiliated with an organization like the NAACP and the work that we do. So I think it's for everyone who's ever been a member. it's for everyone who's ever stood up with us at a press conference, for every volunteer and everybody there volunteer here at the Charleston branch of the NAACP. And somehow, and I say this with a little bit trite, but it's hard as a female and a black female to get the what I call level of acceptance that it's all right for you to have an opinion. So and because of that, I find myself, if not the only one, one of the few African American women that even get a voice in terms of being heard. And that's not because of me, that's because of the NAACP.
Okay.
And I said, to have local recognition after having had a national recognition, it speaks volumes to the work of the NAACP. But I have to say that I'm humble because I think it reminds me how important the work that we do, and I am so committed, having been what I call a survivor rather than a victim of racial discrimination almost throughout my entire life. I'm one of the survivors that have made it my mission, my goal, my life calling to assist folks whose voice needs to be amplified, whose voice are often not heard.
Right.
So that's what I do. And I said, I can't thank the donors enough for doing that in such a public way, because while we don't do it for public recognition, we understand that it lifts up your credibility when you have people, particularly people that are not even African Americans, saying, you know what, that's good work there. And that's what I'm hearing. That's good work, you know. Okay. Folks are not, I tell folks, oftentimes not oftentimes, most of the time I'm showing up that, you know, I'm complaining. We got a problem. When I show up at the business, we got a problem here. We don't just make social visits because that's not the nature of what we do. So we've got a problem here. So it doesn't always put you in a good light, but there are people who do the other kind of work, and then there are people like me that says, you know what, somehow years ago I put on the whole armor. So you go out there and you do what's set forth.
That's good. Well, Dr. Scott, it's always good talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Anytime.
I always love to hear from you.
Thank you.
To talk with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, you have a good one.
You too.